So I'm going to talk a little bit today about kind of basic sustainability orientation. And I'm going to let my coordinators and some of the interns talk to you guys about the projects and some of the things that we're doing here on campus. So I'm going to take the kind of meta level and deal with that meta level, let them deal with the micro level. And it's not to say that I don't think projects are important. They're very important, but they are not sustainability. The vast majority of people think that when we work on energy efficiency and we work on gardens and we work on these great things, the water refill stations, that is sustainability, and it's not. What I would call it is a vehicle for opening up space and connecting with people and being creative. That's what I would call that. That's a piece of sustainability that helps us to generate sustainability, but that's not sustainability. So I just want to say that kind of up front. It's very important. It's a critical piece of what we do. It's part of the engagement process, but simply that's not sustainability, right? They're just projects. Projects are cool. Projects are fun. We need to do projects, but they're just projects, right? And it's how we connect those projects, how we develop meaning from the projects, how we internalize those projects to develop meaning for ourselves and our community. That's getting us closer to sustainability. But in isolation, they're just projects, right? So I want to clarify that right up front. I think that's a good starting point. And as I've started to do these boot camps, as I've started to speak more on campus, I'm really getting to the point where I'm just taking the gloves off. Let's just take the gloves off and start dealing with the realities that we face as a species. And this is as frank as I can be about it. I spent my life studying this stuff, and I really think about this stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can ask my wife. And I can honestly tell you, the world's just a mess. And I think on some level, we all know it's a mess. I don't think I need to go into great detail about why the world's a mess. I think we see it. I think we've observed it. I think we sense it all around us, right? Here's the real depressing part. We don't have any solutions. None. Zero. To deal with the current situation that we find ourselves in. And I think that is really daunting. That we find ourselves in a predicament where we see these complex problems and we have no real solutions to deal with them. And I'm going to tell you why we don't have any solutions. And I'm going to tell you what we're trying to do and how we're trying to rethink these problems in order to at least start the process of developing a pathway to solutions. Okay? I mean, here's really the problem. The world has grown in complexity. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on complexity theory, but complexity theory really has a lot to say about collapse of societies. And that's really what we're talking about here. Is what is the converse to a collapsed society? Not meaning collapse as in Mad Max kind of collapse that it ends up in this post-apocalyptic world that most people envision. Collapse of society meaning we move from a level of complexity and we're forced to move backward into lower levels of or higher levels of simplicity. So we move from a complex society to a more simple one by force. And those that study this, like Jared Diamond and Tainter, these guys that have spent their whole lives in geography and archaeology and anthropology just looking at these communities of collapse. So there's these commonalities. Of course, natural resources have something to do with it. But here's really the key to it. The key to it is that we, in order to become a civilization, we have to grow in complexity. Early on in that process, it takes, for every dollar that you put in to your civilization or your community, it increases exponentially the complexity of that society, and you're able to then get to higher and higher levels of complexity that mean higher and higher levels of civilization. The problem with this is there's a point of diminishing return. And we are now sensing that we are, and a lot of scholars would argue that we are on the backside of this, where it's costing us a lot of dollars to maintain the complexity of our society, and more importantly, the way we're able to think about, or the way we're able to augment complexity is largely now through bureaucracy. We're adding more. If you just look at the College of Charleston as a great example, most of the positions that we've added here at the college are not in faculty lines. They're not to help to enable you guys to learn more. They're mostly in administrative positions. Our office is one of them. We've added bureaucracy to the system. Now, our hope is that we can save the college money that justifies the office, that we can build connections that are able to subvert some of the democracy, and we're able to connect people in critical ways that end up increasing the well-being of our community in ways that couldn't have been done otherwise. I'm open to being examined in this way because I acknowledge the fact that we've added bureaucracy to the system, right? My thought about this would be that we need to examine every position on campus in the same way. It's part of that system. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of where I think sustainability fits. It's on the converse of this collapse of society that I see sustainability. Sustainability is about finding ways to avoid the collapse of our society that maintains the civilization, maintains the culture, maintains the way of life, right? So I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Things that took years, even 10 or 15 years ago, now develop overnight. Disease can spread around the world literally overnight and affect not just millions, but possibly billions of people, depending on what it is what kind of disease you're talking about. So this demonstrates our interconnectivity. But if you look around and we think globally, locally, and nationally, globally we now see rising powers that are not really championing human rights and democracy. Let me give you a good economic example. Right now, North America represents about 25% of global GDP. Asia represents about 20%, almost equal. By 2035, Asia will represent 40% of global GDP, North America 12%. Who's going to be the economic power of the world by the middle to the end of your generation? Asia. And there's no doubt about it. The trajectory is really clear. The problem is, they're not champions of democracy. They're not champions of human rights. They're not champions of the things that we have grown to really embrace as part of who we are as human beings. And I'm not saying that the United States is a great beacon, brilliant light of an example on either score. One could argue that we're sitting right now in the midst of a decaying democracy. I probably can make a pretty convincing case that your generation has never seen democracy actually work in this country, at least the way it was intended and designed to do. So that's a real problem. The second thing is, when we look locally, there's a real serious loss of connection and control. We are connected globally, we're more connected, but we're less connected in important ways. It's the best way I can phrase it. We no longer know our neighbors. There's a loss of community. People don't generate thought and action in their communities anymore like they did in previous generations. Just go talk to your parents and grandparents about this. I come from Pittsburgh. Sitting out on the stoop every night, particularly in lower middle class areas, was what everybody did. Somebody tried to kidnap my mom when she was a kid. A bunch of people on the stoop sat there, ran out, started yelling at the person, grabbed my mom back. They were trying to jam my mom into a car. It was all because people were out and about, sitting out there communicating, watching, building community resilience. That's what we call it today. So there's this loss of connection and control. At the nation-state level, the nation-state's eroding. The power of the state, the power of the United States is being eroded. Businesses really control that international space now. And they're dictating more and more of what we do, not just as consumers, but I'll be quite frank with you, they dictate a lot about what we do and who we are as an educational institution. So when we think about these things, there is a sense of a loss of control, a loss of connection that is very difficult for us to just recapture from a sustainability perspective, put it in a sustainability perspective. What I think you should take away from this is these problems are not going to be easy to solve. They've taken generations to create, and they're going to take generations to solve. That's why in my classes I always say, we're in this together. This is a 3-generation minimum type problem. And we're not going to come up with any kind of answer in this generation that we can implement and see the fruits of that labor, or at least see the culmination of that labor in a solution. It's going to take multiple generations. I'm not even sure you guys in your generation can do that. And when we think about that time and that scale, that's really important. It sets new priorities. Yes, climate change and a lot of the ocean acidification, desertification, all these things that we see in the environment are really critical issues. But we've got to start to think about ways that we can adapt. We're going to be forced to adapt. And I think there's going to be something that we find in terms of who we are as a species with how we choose to adapt. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try and find ways to mitigate. Certainly we should, primarily because it's more cost effective to do it that way. What we can do today is going to, if it costs us $1, it's going to cost us $10 in 20 years to do. It's more cost effective, and it really buys into this intergenerational equity for us to do as much as we can today. So I don't mean to minimize the mitigation argument about any of the environmental issues. I just mean that we're going to be forced to adapt on some level. It's inevitable. That ship has sailed, so to speak. So we really need to be thinking in these multiple dimensions. And the way that I would like to characterize, and I've begun to kind of characterize where we stand, is that we are now in a post-industrial era. I don't know what I've heard people call it the information age, the technology. I think it's irrelevant what we call it. I think history should determine what the era was. But what I can tell you is that we lived in an industrial bubble. And we've left that era behind. And part of the problem is that we are trying now, really as a species, to understand and grapple with the fact that we're leaving an entire era behind and entering into a new one. This era is probably going to last a minimum of 100 years. We sit at this critical intersection between eras, where we are literally going to shift systems, and how we think, how we behave, is going to be a byproduct of that. All of that is going to shift. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to shift for the better. That's incumbent upon us. It just means it's inevitable that it's going to shift, and we're in the process of that shift. When we looked at the characteristics of the industrial bubble, I mean, it was about unlimited expansion and growth. I mean, all we thought about was, how do we expand? How do we grow? That's a fair question. It was an honorable pursuit. Capitalism was a perfect vehicle for it. Perfect. Democracy was allowed to flourish in this environment. And we got to realize liberal values of freedom and on multiple levels, freedom of thought, freedom of action, for most people. We still have work to do on that front, no doubt about it. But if we look historically, these are tremendous accomplishments that came from thinking about unlimited expansion and growth. The biggest problems were really just economic and kind of trying to work out the machinations of capitalism and state-to-state conflict, world wars. It's hard to envision a world war today, at least amongst nation states, because most conflict is internal to a state now. States are eroding. Most conflict is solved in the markets and the economic system. So we've seen transition there. Most companies were command and control. Most governments were command and control, built largely on paternal hierarchy, to be quite frank. I mean, even look at the College of Charleston. Look at the administration across the board, mainly old white guys, right? Basically telling us and dictating policy, telling us what we're going to do, setting the policy, setting the parameters of what runs this education, this educational system. Most of this industrial bubble was formulated on that, on a strict hierarchy, right? And it was built on the premise, let's externalize whatever we can for free. Shift the burden. Anytime you can, you shift the burden. That's the hallmark of capitalism. Take what you can for free, externalize what you can for free, and if you have to, shift the burden and the risk to somebody else. In a premise, when your premise is unlimited expansion and growth, that's fine. You can always look to the greater good. It's going to be better for all of us if we have a couple of leaders that are able to shift the burden, even though those others may be harmed in the pathway. We're growing and rising the boats for all of us. We're rising, we're creating the middle class. So it was easy to justify that. But what's happened is we've reached the limits. And we're seeing the limits all around us. We're seeing the limits of economic growth. We're seeing the limits of our natural resources. We're seeing the limits of us externalizing all this. We're seeing the limits on who we are as people. Now that we're not connecting with other people, we're not connected like we were before, I think we're seeing the limits in what it means to be a human society. We're testing it, I think, as Americans in a lot of fundamental ways. And organizations were built upon self-interest and profit in a lot of ways to exploit. And I think the entire system, if you were to characterize the system of governance, the system of economics, it's one that's built on exploitation. It's built on exploitation, whether it's the environment or it's other human beings. And this is where sustainability differs, if you will, with environmentalism on some basic level. I think a lot of environmentalists believe that if we were to change and address the environment and stop exploiting the environment, that we could shift the economic system and shift the way we deal with other human beings. From a sustainability perspective, most people in the field don't believe that. Most believe we have to stop exploiting each other first. Then we can start thinking about how else we are exploiting around us. And that makes a lot of sense to me, at least. Because we have to learn how to interact with each other before we can learn to interact with the environment, at least at this scale. I can go off and enjoy the environment. I do the environment when I'm going out and I'm dealing with nature and I'm walking in nature. I feel exuberant. It's exciting to me, but this is just me. It's not dealing with the environment and nature at scale with all these billions of people. And we're adding 3 more billion, oh, by the way, in the next 25 years. So this is where we start to kind of see a little bit of a difference between them. So for me, the problem is this. The problem is really us. It's how we interact. Right? And I would say the problem is actually in our misinterpretation of the problem. The problem is the design of our systems. The system is designed for that industrial bubble. The system's not designed for the new era that we are walking into. One that's going to be built on sustainability, regeneration eventually. It's going to be built on renewable energy. It's going to be built on communities and connection. I mean, this is at least the hope and the hope and the dream of what we would like to see. I hate to paint the other picture of overly securitized economic regions that exploit vast billions of people and their resources in this almost post-apocalyptic world. And I think that's one that's very easy to envision, given where we see economic trajectories, where we see environmental concerns, and many of these issues that we are beginning to see across the globe. So that's the problem. Real quickly, not only do we have a design problem, not only are we seeing these issues that kind of manifest economically and environmentally, But to me, the most depressing portion of all of this is this data. It's longitudinal data from my sustainability class. And we asked, during your life, in my intro class, we asked the students to go out, talk to their family and friends, and give them this survey on fulfillment and well-being. I think the N is up to around 600 or 700 people at this point. And we asked them, during your lifetime, and you have to be able to at least look back 10 years, so the person usually has to be about 30 to answer this question. You have observed, and this is the conclusion from this, you've observed increases or decreases in this, and to what degree? Technology, it was on a 1 to 5 scale, so obviously technology setting the baseline at 4.86. Everybody's basically saying we've seen an increase in technology. Consumption, and this, by the way, there's no differentiation between Republicans and Democrats in this particular, on many of these questions, but particular in consumption. So it's basically, regardless of ideology, most people are saying we've seen massive amounts of increase in consumption. The interesting part is they've also seen massive amounts of environmental harm. The most interesting fact that comes out of this is that there is a very strong correlation between the way people think about consumption and environmental harm. Meaning that the problem isn't that people don't understand that overconsumption leads to environmental harm. They kind of understand it. And they understand it surprisingly well. And they understand even more that they're part of the problem, according to this data. The question is, why do they know that and not do anything? And I would say that that's because we have a systems design problem that doesn't enable people to take action that's in line with what goes on in their daily lives, right? But here's the hard part. We see serious declines in sense of community, belief in American ideals, and knowing neighbors. The things that ranked the lowest were trust in government and trust in corporations. Didn't matter ideology, political party, gender, age, all relatively neutral factors in this. So if you're looking to create change, you're looking to create sustainability, you're looking to create an avenue toward this new vision, how are you doing it? How? If you're talking with people that don't trust corporations, who now probably control, or at least influence, most of our systems, you don't trust governments, we had a whole list of these things. Local leaders, local politicians, low levels of trust across the board, belief in American ideals, loss of religion as an anchor in our institution, in our belief system. We're losing our sense of community and don't know our neighbors. Who is it that we're talking to about these things? Who are we working with? To me, this is the most disturbing part. Because what it suggests is, no matter how much you talk about these problems to people, you're probably going to be talking to deaf ears, because we don't have any of these things. People don't trust you. They don't trust me. If you just look at the data on trust for scientists, this has seen a precipitous decline in the last 10 years. People don't even trust scientists anymore. Which means they're doubting the educational system, and with skyrocketing tuition, who can blame them? Right? So you look at this, and this to me is the root of the problem. You get the design, that's our real problem. But in terms of how we're going to turn this around, this is really the problem. Because it means you can tell people all day long all about all these other problems and the future trajectory. This is going to harm your kids, your grandkids, and they're going to still feel somewhat helpless, mainly because they don't trust any of the institutions or people around them. Right? I was supposed to run through that. So I'm going to skip over this part. Basically, here's the deal. Attempts to define sustainability revolve around the 3 P's or the 3 E's. Environment, equity, and environment, equity, and economy, and the 3 P's, people, planet, and profit. But these really, they just don't help us in any way. In a lot of instances, when you get into analyzing sustainability, this really is harmful. It's confusing, because most of it is still treated as separate. So when the economy and equity and environment are sitting out there as your 3 E's, they're still prioritized. And we have grown up on the notion of expansion in that industrial era, on growth. So what is it that we're going to emphasize? Economy. Right? So they're not integrated to really give us an understanding of what sustainability could be to me. What I think this, I did this for a publication that I'm working on, and basically the only thing that you should take away is most of human history has been at this level of competition, trying to basically survive. We're trying to maintain what we have. There's this little bridge here called eco-efficiency or greening. And I think it's an important bridge. This bridge is helping us to understand the transition that we're making from the industrial era over to this post-industrial era. It's helping us to understand how we can use the industrial system today and the model that we created, the systems we've created, and help us to transition by greening things, making them more efficient, making them more cost-effective, less environmentally harmful. Very important transition step. But I would argue that sustainability sits above it. Then we're interested really at that point in sustaining something as a function of, or a dichotomy of thinking about collapsing societies that I talked about at the beginning. How do you counter this natural propensity for with increased complexity comes society and the inevitability of societal collapse? Well, I would argue sustainability is that answer, at least on some basic level. But I would even say sustainability is not enough. We need to get to a point where we're thriving. And I would argue that that's where we need to start thinking about regeneration, where waste is completely eliminated from the system. Seems hard to imagine, but we need to reach a point where waste is completely eliminated from the system. And that what we do not only is based on renewable energy, that's sustainability, but we're giving back. We're regenerating energy, right? That's the future. That has to be our future. So sustainability is merely a bridge to this new world. Maybe the better way to think about sustainability, and I hate using the word capital, but I think that it provides some analytic oomph for us to kind of grapple with, is to think in terms of, obviously most of this is around financial or economic capital. That's the way we typically think of it, and that's why I dislike using the word capital, but I do think that it offers us some analytic purchase to try and understand what it means when we say integrate. We need to be thinking about natural capital, stocks and flows of natural resources, and the basic inherent nature, the inherent value of nature. Humans, people, and knowledge. One of the main problems with sustainable development in this region is human capital. We don't have it. Namely, we don't have intellectual capital in this region to sustain or generate sustainable development, let alone sustain it. Hence, there's a conversation about merging and bringing in the law school and these kinds of things. Why? Because people are increasingly recognizing that there's a dearth of intellectual capital in this region to sustain that kind of growth that's necessary over the next 20 years to keep up with that projection of growth in population growth. Infrastructure, what we build, our products, that's capital. There's value to it. Social capital, something that we in the office, we stress social capital, social capital, social capital. It's about rebuilding, restoring those relationships and bonds that make people want to help you as opposed to push you away and sit in isolation. It makes people want to listen and do something. Building those social capital, very important. Arguably, in a sustainable world, this is more important than financial. Cultural, a means of adaptation. How do you plan on adapting? We can talk about climate change all day. I think the more important question about climate change is how do you plan on adapting? You adapt, if you look to ancient cultures, you adapt by relying on your culture. Your culture has inherent ways of teaching adaptation. In this light, maybe the United States is not the best place or base culture to teach us about adaptation. But if we look around the cultures of the world, there's lessons about how do you adapt. And I think that's cultural capital. Unfortunately, capitalism in our current system has run over so much of the cultural capital instead of trying to capture it. And utilize it for the future. And I add this last one, regenerative capital. That's the capital we have to take from savings. Whatever we've done, you cannot go around working on projects to save this campus money, nor can you do it at a national level, nor can you do it, should we be doing it globally, where we're taking money, and we're taking projects, we're saving money, and then just watching that money float away. We need to regenerate that capital and keep on investing it into cycles, constant evolving cycles of investment in sustainability. To me, that's building not only the social capital, but the platform for all of us to be able to move forward, and we can do it by understanding how we fit in these larger systems. When we understand our purpose and fit, we as human beings are unstoppable. The problem is we don't really understand our purpose. We don't understand how we fit. We don't understand how these systems are affecting us. Therefore, it's not about being a Republican or a Democrat, conservative or a liberal. It's about all of us feeling helpless in this system in which we don't know our significance, we don't know our purpose, and we don't know how we fit. That's why we're lost. That's why I said at the beginning, this is a mess. So that, for me, is what sustainability is all about. I know it's not what you probably expected when you showed up here. So a couple quick points on what we're doing around these things. We think about these issues all the time in the Office of Sustainability. We work hard on creating a family atmosphere in the office. Why? Because we're trying to counterbalance one of those crises, the degradation of the family unit in the United States of America. That's a critical problem. All of us are experiencing it. My family, everybody born and raised in Pittsburgh. I was the first to go to college in my entire extended family, so we weren't transient. We weren't running around. All my family traces all of its roots for generations in Pittsburgh. My brother lives in Germany, works in Germany. My sister's in Jersey. I'm here in Charleston, and my other brother's in Atlanta. My parents live in Atlanta. How do you create a sustainable community when we're all packing up and leaving? We're all in disparate areas. And I can honestly tell you, as a parent of 4 kids under the age of 6, I need that family resilience. I need that support to help with my family sometimes. I don't have it. It's just my wife and I, right? So this is a simple example of what I mean by the building of social capital, building of community resilience. But let me just show you real quick, because I think this is so important to what it is we're trying to do. If you look at the College of Charleston mission, which I'm embarrassed to tell you, the vast majority of people on this campus don't know what the mission of the college is, if you ask them. But the core of it is, look at that last part of it, to empower the individual to enrich society. The goal of the college is to empower individuals and to enrich our society and community around us. That's the goal. So in our office, we use that and believe in that, obviously, 100%, and our definition or our mission is built off that one. Instead of trying to pursue and share knowledge, we're trying to apply it. We want out in the world, we want to apply it to the world around us through a holistic praxis to create sustainable solutions that transform society by rethinking, redesigning, and restoring integrated systems. What do I think is so important about that? The mission is on your left. If you just look at the keywords that are on the right, you see what we think is important. It's about application. It's about holism. It's about praxis, merging of theory and practice together to create a new model, and it engages you. It's a new way of learning. It's about solutions. I'm tired of hearing about problems. Let's identify the problem. Let's try and understand how we can attack that problem and ultimately solve it. Right? And the solutions don't come at one level. They're multi-scaled and interconnected. When we create the water refill stations, believe me, it creates 2 or 3 other problems. And only by understanding what other problems they create can you holistically keep on addressing them. You need to have knowledge of the whole system. Otherwise, you create a solution in a silo. You think you've solved something. You may have for your own silo, but you probably created 3 or 4 unintended consequences for every other silo. So only by understanding that larger frame, that systems frame, are you able to understand and see those problems. It's about transformation. It's about rethinking and redesigning. And it's about systems, as I said. That, to me, is what sustainability is all about. And I'm going to end with this part. Autobiosis, and it's really about nature regeneration. Nature regenerates. It's through this regeneration in which nothing is regenerated the same that change takes place. This is so important. It means, for us, sustainability is one of the lower priorities, actually, in the Office of Sustainability. Because one, we have to create the space first. We have to connect with people to open up the space so that people understand and are accepting, are a little bit more open-minded about accepting, creating the space for students to work on projects, opening it up. That's the first priority, and continually opening up until we're in the community, until we're in the region, until we're in the nation, until we're talking to our brothers and sisters around the world. It's about regeneration that leads to change. What is regeneration? Regeneration is creativity, entrepreneurship. It's about innovation. It's the spark of who we are as human beings, but it's also the spark of creating change. You have to be creative first, then change comes. You don't create change and then become creative. So we think about regeneration, from which change then flows, not the other way around. Then, after those things, we can start to think about sustainability. But here's what really happens. We do all those three things at the same time. But it's important to always know that you're doing one before the other. How you prioritize it in your mind, how you are prioritizing your resources and having people really thrown into the system to go and work, whether it's on a project around a garden, or it's a larger working on sustainable development with a couple of businesses like we're starting to do. It's a bike share program. We're always thinking about how can we be creative? How do we open up the space a little bit further? And it's in there that we can insert these kind of projects. So the bottom line is we don't focus on change. We focus on regeneration. We focus on opening up space. And in there, naturally flow ideas around sustainability. So I have a whole bunch more. I could talk for probably another hour or two on this stuff. But I'm going to leave it off there and let you guys ask some questions of me before I introduce these guys. So questions?
How many of you are overwhelmed right now?
Come take my class.
Raise your hand, that's cool. It's a lot.
Could you be more specific about what you mean by space? You mean like industrial space, or do you mean like intellectual? Can you be a little more specific about that?
All of it.
All of it?
I mean, one of the frustrations that I have here is just thinking physical space. We need the proper physical space to be creative. And one of the things we've been battling with is trying to get ourselves together in a space, because we haven't even been in a space together yet, that we feel like we can be creative together. So it's opening up physical space. And I think the way that physical space is designed is really critical to open up the energy that you throw into a project. And I think it has a lot to do with how you process. We think a lot about process management in the office. How can we continue to improve the process so it improves everybody else's well-being in the office and makes them more productive? So we always are thinking about different models. So we have both the intellectual space to try and experiment with different processes. We would like different physical space that brings us together, makes it more conducive to experiment with that process, and then hone what it is that we're doing well. It's about, with this position, for example, the position I have, I'm able to create new programs. We're creating professional development and leadership programs, certifications that will go along with anybody that comes through the office. Now we're thinking about how do we scale that. This shouldn't be an elitist venture. It shouldn't be a venture for only a few people. How is it that we scale this so that others have So that's what I mean. We got to think about how we open up that space for programs, for intellectual capital, for social capital. Obviously, we're trying to open up space financially. The more we save, the more we empower those around us to use that savings in ways to generate more sustainability. So if you think about that form of capital, it's all those forms of capital. So when I say space, it can range from in physical space to intellectual space to social capital space.
I would even add emotional space. A lot of this stuff is
absolutely.
very emotionally heavy, and we don't, as a society, allow ourselves that space to kind of explore those topics and kind of make it okay to have emotions. So I would even add emotional space to that.
I think that's actually extremely important. One of the things that we focus on in the office is not just a sense of family, but we open up that emotional space. I mean, there's too many personal things to tell you about how working in the office and being an intern, I think, has literally transformed individuals. And I think if they were here, they would literally tell you the experience has transformed them as a person first. And that's really powerful. That's opening up space where people feel comfortable enough that they can be who they want to be and that they feel empowered. And I think for students, one of the things that drives me crazy, and Burton and Dan know that this drives me crazy, and of course my staff do, but I just don't like seeing students degraded in any way. Like, you guys aren't human beings, and first and foremost, you guys can't go out there and solve some of these problems now. You can. And that's the role of the office, to put you in positions where you're able to take on a project. Now, you find, like Stefan with the vending misers, you'll find that your ideas are only take you so far, and sometimes your ideas don't take you very far at all. As much as you like to think that if I've got this great idea, it's just going to kind of flow out there. It takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of perseverance to kind of overcome, unfortunately, the barriers that have been put in front of us. And there's a ton of them. And so it's emotional on a pretty consistent basis. So that space is so critical to maintaining the well-being and productivity of the office. I report to Steve Osborne, the CFO of the college, directly. So I'm lodged in pretty high in the business affairs side, and I'm a tenure-track professor on the academic side. I've maintained both of them. The reason is that we believe that locating the Office of Sustainability at the intersection of student affairs, academic affairs, and business affairs allows us to be a hub, if you will, for research, teaching, and operational management of all these issues at once. So these guys, even though they've got titles around academics and facilities, we're trying to, all of us do the same, all operate in all three spheres as much as possible, right? So we need holistic thinkers. Integration is the key. So we try to set up the office like that. So we're thinking coordinator in student affairs, a coordinator in academic affairs, and a coordinator with facilities. That will help us to bridge and empower each of those spheres in an integrated way. So that's the idea behind the Office of Sustainability. It's really more a function of organizational management at this point, and how do we change the organizational structure to create the space so that sustainability can come in. Right? But we're still operating in all three spheres, and that's where the students play such an important role, because we can't operate in all three spheres on our own. For me, most of my time, quite honestly, spent in the regeneration and in the first category, opening the space, like changing structure. So we need students working with these guys doing the really hard work, which is the sustainability portion of it. And in a lot of ways, you're empowered to do exactly that with the office. So, and what you want to work on, that's why I don't spend a lot of time on what you want to work on. It's up to you, not us. We'll work with you. We're not here to tell you what to go work on. We're here to work with you on campus sustainability and eventually community sustainability. All right, guys, let me introduce to you my two coordinators. I'm going to introduce first Jen Jones. She's our facilities coordinator.
I'm Jen Jones. I'm the facilities coordinator. So my main focus, and like Brian said, we don't, I'm not in this tiny little bubble where I only work in facilities, but my main focus and the main part of our office that I'm driving is on our facilities. If you're not familiar with that, that's like developing our recycling plan. That's working on any physical infrastructure things, working a lot with the physical plan, res life facilities department. So just a little bit about my background. I am a Central Illinoisan original, down here for now 4 years. I came down to work on my master's in environmental science here at college, and I met Brian in one of my classes, and up until that point I had been like gung-ho conservation biology. This is how I'm going to change the world. Ever since I was young, I knew that I had to do something with my life that was going to do something. I couldn't just have a 9 to 5 where I just showed up and I worked for 8 hours and then I went home and then nothing else happened. I needed something in my life to make a change to the world. So I went through various iterations of veterinarian and zookeeper, and I was a communications major for 2 weeks. And finally settled on plant biology and conservation biology, and I was going to go out and make amazing discoveries and change the world through science. And got about a year and a half into the MES program after having been part of a research team, and just was really disenchanted with science and the purpose of science. And at that time I was taking Dr. Fisher's class, and he talks about all of this stuff, so you just have that jaw drop moment where you're like, whoa, this is so heavy, what do I do with it? So it really spoke to me, and I just had to change what I was doing and change my trajectory towards sustainability. So I was in the middle of a project with the Nature Conservancy. I stopped doing it and signed up to do my master's thesis with Dr. Fisher. So I had no idea what I was doing. I literally identified plants for a living. That was my job. I went to the forest and I got mosquito bites, and I said, this plant is that, and that plant is that. So everything that I've learned about sustainability has come in the last 3 years, so don't think, oh, I don't know anything about sustainability. It's an adaptive field. You can't just know everything. Fisher doesn't even know everything. So that's kind of my story and how I got here. I hope one thing you take away from that is that everyone has a vested interest in sustainability. It's not just political science or biology, or you can take parts of the things that you have to offer the world and work it into sustainability. That's one of the best things I think about the field. So my role within the office is really to kind of help to guide projects centered in the operations, and also to work with our operations to move us forward towards sustainable initiatives in facilities. So like the energy and the waste type stuff, I help our interns work on. So projects around that would be me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly, my name is Jesse Baker. As Brian said, we've known each other for quite some time. I got my PhD at the same institution that he got his in. We studied very different things, but we did have one class in common, which is where we got to know each other. We realized that we held a lot in common, and we became pretty good friends. When I finished, let me back up. I'll just say I grew up in a logging family in Oregon, which means that I experienced this mix of environmentalism and business and natural resource exploitation at the same time, which really kind of made me begin to look at the importance of both people and the natural environment coexisting. And that's something that, Dr. Fisher obviously touched on. I think that's very important for you guys to really understand. Anyways, taking that kind of general ideology, I went into graduate school, and I got a PhD in environmental policy, again, really focusing on sort of the nexus of people and the environment and what that really means. And when I graduated, I really wasn't very enthralled with the academic opportunities that were available. Certainly there were some good ones. Brian found a great opportunity, and I know a few other people that have, but I really wasn't impressed with that kind of, he's mentioned siloed thinking. For those of you who don't know what that means you just have a very narrow scope. This is your world. It's in a silo, right? It's very tall and narrow. I was interested in something that was more broad and integrated. So I founded a nonprofit organization that was focused on what we thought of as integrated and comprehensive actions and thought. And that really reflects and is very similar and mirrors, I guess, the ideas here. One of the conferences that I went to a couple of years ago, who here is familiar with Hunter Lovins? Anyone know who she is? She's one of the world's, I would say, leading consultants on sustainability. She works with tons of large corporations and really helps kind of generate a lot of this thought on sustainability. And I wrote an article that someone was interviewing her about, and they asked, what is the #1 problem that this world faces? And her answer was climate change. Fairly predictable, and I thought, she's wrong. And the reason that she's wrong is because there's no number one problem. It's a flawed question, which I think really reflects what Brian was getting at. The way that we think about sustainability and the way that we're impacting the world is fundamentally flawed. We tend to do that all the time. Now, that's not to say that prioritization in terms of developing a plan of action isn't acceptable, but we can't think of things in terms of, well, this problem is greater than this problem, or this problem is greater than this problem, because they're all integrated. And that's what really excited me the most about the potential of coming here and working within this office, because you really don't get that kind of mindset in too many programs in any parts of academia. The business affairs deals with the processes of functioning and operating a university, but then I also get to work with different academic departments to for us to help them integrate sustainable concepts into whatever it is that they do in terms of running their office, or maybe some of the professors might want to integrate some sustainability concepts into what they teach. We're here to help them with that. I also get to work with Jen on a lot of the operational practices, and then we get to work on integrating the community and different parts of the campus into what it is that we do. So I'm really excited. I'm the new guy, which means I'm one of the new bureaucratic layers that got implemented here, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm a West Coast guy. This is a totally new environment for me. I'm excited about it. Tons of great food. I got my first waves in last night, so we can actually surf here, which is cool. I'm excited about being here. And that's kind of it right now.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I'm curious to know how many first-year students, freshmen, are here.
Proud.
I'm Dan Dickinson. I work with the Marketing Communications Division on campus. I'm also a sustainability liaison with the office. But I'm just curious to know who's making up this audience. So, thank you.
What brought you guys here?
Well, I
You can say
saw
extra credit if you're inclined.
I saw the Office of Sustainability at orientation. I was at the first orientation, and it really interested me because I have a big passion for not teaching people like we get ingrained in our society the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. And then people see recycling, reusing things as like that's the way they should be green. And I believe that there's so many more ways and so many more opportunities that present themselves to become environmentally friendly in today's society, and we just let those go past us. So I really was excited because this seemed to get more involved with other ways besides we can collect pop cans and get whatever for that. So like, I don't know, it was just really cool, and it seemed like this was the place that I could do that with. And then last Sunday or Monday, Daphne and I went and saw at George Stock, there was Planet Earth, and so we signed up for that too. And they talked about the Office of Sustainability, so I knew I was gonna come here for this meeting.
Awesome. You mentioned that there are other problems besides like the environmental, for instance, sustainability. But are there any initiatives set up to like eradicate the poverty that's like out basically 5 blocks away in North Charleston or something, or like food on campus, or any of those other things that are actually just as important as like really obvious environmental concerns?
Absolutely. One thing that we do have within the office that we've kind of started to touch on those types of issues is a book share that we've set up. So basically we have a box full of donated books from various places around campus and various individuals around campus. And we have intentionally placed them in areas where there's really unique boundaries between socioeconomic statuses. So one is down at Buffet Street, so you've got your high-end black tab coffee where you spend $5 on a cup of coffee, and literally across the street is government housing projects. So we intentionally chose that location to act as a draw, to bring those two together, to start conversations, to provide resources to people who may not have them. We're just getting started in that realm. There's tons of obvious work to be done there, tons of opportunity. But that's just one thing that we've started doing right now.
We're also partnering with the Center for Civic Engagement on an event in November for Homelessness and Hunger Awareness Week. And so one of the things that we are looking at is the development of Upper King, Upper Meeting, and the impact that has on the communities that are currently living there. So it'll be the week before Thanksgiving, but it's going to be a whole week based off of kind of what is it like to be at the poverty level in Charleston. There'll be a whole week of events too. So definitely keep an eye out for that, because that's going to be a great week for a number of different events as well.
And always, we're available to be used as a resource for you to start projects or programs or things that you think would help to start addressing those problems as well.
And that's something I really wanted to address. I mean, that's a lot of why we're here, you know. So if you or people you know really have a project that you're passionate about, you want to see something done, or you want to be empowered to work on that, come talk to us. You know, because we can't do everything. We don't know everything. We don't have all those resources. But if people are excited and passionate, we can certainly help. You know, push something in that direction.
Yeah, the Office of Sustainability also shares an office with the Green Heart Project, which helps local impoverished children through a farm to school program.
Absolutely. We really see ourselves as a hub. Some people get the idea that just because the college now has an office of sustainable, we're just magically going to be sustainable just because of this office and its existence, and we'll do it all. That's not the case. Like we've been saying throughout this whole talk, is that this is something that everybody has to be a part of and everybody has to invest in. Because one person, one individual can't make sustainability. It has to be a group, a community, an entire population of people to do that. So.
What are the ongoing projects like currently?
We have so many, it's silly. A really good resource to kind of get a cursory overview of everything that we have is to go onto our webpage. And actually today we launched a brand new kind of look to that, and it just kind of has a pictorial view of all of our projects, and you can find out more information. And we're continually developing that, so we'll have more information up as the semester progresses. But we're gonna hear in just a minute, as soon as one of our graduate assistants get here. He has class until 5. As soon as he gets here, we're gonna do little breakout groups and to talk about some specific projects that we've got going, and give you guys an opportunity to see, again, not what the project is, but how the process went into create the project and how students were involved at every step and what it took to get the project going. Again, with more emphasis on the process than the actual, we've got energy saving things and things like that. So.
And how do you get involved in presenting presenting a project that you want to do? I mean, is there like a form you fill out, or?
You want to talk about that?
Sure. I'm actually working as an intern for the first time this fall at the office, which I'm really excited to start. But we have a committee on campus called the E-Collective Student Project Committee, which is a group that it's 7 students, and we meet to discuss projects that students bring to the office. So if you have any ideas, there's a process. It's outlined on the website as well, but we go through a bunch of steps. We review a final proposal, and we work with students, either individuals or groups, who are interested in starting some kind of project on campus or even at off-campus locations. So there's an outline online, but it'll be a little bit more clear. But
yeah, and the purpose of the committee is for students to kind of work as a resource again for students who, I have an idea. Okay, well, let's work with you to make that idea happen. So it's a very supported process. It's not like, okay, what do you want to do? Give us a proposal. You can come to the committee with an idea, and they'll help you through the steps of turning that idea into a reality. So Ashlyn is one of our graduate assistants, and our other graduate assistant, Erin Hawley, will be here very soon. But these are current graduate students who are basically staff members at the office, and they're going to talk you through specific tangible ways that you can get involved in sustainability initiatives on campus. And then, like I said, when we're done with that, we'll break into the breakout groups, and our interns who have led up some of these projects will talk to you and just give you more ideas on, or more information on how they were involved. So.
Awesome. Hi, my name's Ashlyn. I've been a graduate assistant with the office for 2 years this month. So I originally started out as an unpaid intern my last semester as an undergrad here, and then moved into a graduate position role the following semester when I started the MES program here. So it's kind of a little bit of my trajectory. with the office. My role, basically, Aaron's the other graduate assistant. We help manage internship projects, so we help advise our interns on who to go to, how to get something done, who's the right person that I need to speak to, what are some of the barriers that you're going to have, that kind of thing. So we really serve as a resource to all of the interns that we have at the office. And so kind of what I'm going to talk about is how you can get involved with sustainability. These are all of our awesome interns this summer. But so one way you can get involved is applying for an internship. So we have a number of different programs available, including unpaid internships, internships for credit, and then paid internships as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved, and a lot of ways that you can donate maybe 2 hours a week or 15 hours a week. You can really kind of make it fit your schedule. There's not just a very strict role for each of the positions. And then we also have roles as unofficial volunteers. So when we need help with Recyclemania, or we need help with different trash audits, or different events that we have going on where, hey, I have an extra afternoon, yeah, let me get involved. So there's another way that you can. And Erica spoke a little bit about the ESPEC committee. So how that's set up is every semester students pay $5, $10, and that money goes into a fund that's called the E-Collective Fund. And basically that fund is open for students who want to work on projects that aren't necessarily attached to the office. So it's definitely a good way to get involved, good way to get your project started and get experience. And then finally, I just wanted to go over 3 different programs we have inside of the actual office as a part of the initiatives we started. The first one is Sustainable Greek Chair Program that was started last spring. And so that will be implemented again this fall. And so basically representatives of different Greek organizations on campus will have a sustainability chair who will represent them, like was one last year, and help implement more sustainable initiatives in their own chapter. So if that's something that you want to get involved with, definitely get in touch with one of our interns. It should be going out in the next couple of weeks. And then the second program we have is our Garden Apprentice program, which if you want to be involved, Lexa is your point of contact. And basically it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but basically you would be involved with all aspects of the political science garden, including planting, harvesting, pest control, different things. Lexa's done a really great job incorporating more sustainable practices, indigenous culture, so it's going to be an awesome program. And then our final one is
Sustainability Bootcamp captains. Sorry, I was late. I had class that just got out of 5. So. But it's a new program this year. We're implementing in the residence life. Basically, it's just another way for students to get involved on campus, help out the RAs, help us with that. It's how long the program we're doing this year in residence life. So if you're a freshman in the halls, just contact your RA if you're interested, or talk to myself or Carrie, who is a residence life intern. After this, we can set you with that. But.
Do you guys have any questions about that? I know I kind of have a tendency to ramble and just go off, so if you have any questions, definitely ask me or come talk to us at me.
And you can find out more information about all of these. We'll have it up on our webpage. And you can't then just, there's a contact us page. You can always give us a holler.
All right, I want to talk really quick about some other campus organizations kind of outside our office. It also provides other opportunities for you guys just to kind of get involved. These first 2, Green CFC and Alliance for Planet Earth, also known as 8, are kind of more environmentally focused student organizations. Green CFC, they do a lot of kind of different events and have bring speakers throughout the year. I think actually coming up in October, they're having a food day, so look out for that. And Alliance for Planet Earth, they also do various events and things throughout the year. Their big one every year is the trash audit. It happens during the Sustainability Week. If you were here last year on the Cougar Mall, if you saw that one day, there was just trash all over the place and people walking around with like gloves and masks, sorting through trash. That's what that was. That was basically Alliance for Planet Earth and various volunteers sorting through one day's worth of trash through Baybank and kind of seeing what exactly was thrown away and what could have been diverted from landfill. Center for Civic Engagement, it's not necessarily environmentally focused, that's just another way, that's an office on campus that kind of allows students, gives them opportunities to kind of engage with the community, various volunteering events. They have also a Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week every November. I'll just talk with that. grad student organization, the Master of Environmental Studies Student Association. They have various volunteering events throughout the year. You don't actually have to be a member of the program to volunteer with them. They do have like an Adopt a Highway monthly. They do their big event every year is the AK for H2Os. They need volunteers for that. And then finally, CFC Clean Eats. That's just a student group focused around the slow eating movement, and they like locally grown source food. So.
And we have Cliff from Alliance for Planet Earth here, Abby Tenenbaum and Stefan from Green CFC, and then Erin Hawley is actually the social chair from Mesa. So if you're interested in any of those are the people you kind of want to come. Awesome. And so what we're going to do right now is kind of break out. These are just the major projects that we have going on. There are a bunch of other smaller ones. We just wanted to get kind of our big initiatives kind of represented here, so that way you can talk to our interns and ask questions, see if this is maybe a program you want to get involved in, different things like that. So what we'll do is actually break out, I don't know what time it is, but for 10 minutes, and then I'll let you guys know when the next one is up, and then we'll switch, and then for another 10